Yes, I do believe that there is evidence of human activity down below the money pit at depths like 170 feet. Hey everyone, Jeff here with the J Free 906 podcast and continuing on with the Curse of Oak Island series. Today we're going to be talking about this borehole right here. This would be C1. Do you remember C1? C1 originally started out back in season 3 as a 6-inch borehole. The guys were drilling and he found a huge cavity. He talked about how it dropped a long way, about 10 feet, as they were doing their drill program. Shortly thereafter, they rigged up this camera the best they could with a flashlight on it so they could get a look down there. But things were pretty primitive back in those early days on Oak Island. This is the shiny gold thing they found down below that 6-inch casing. Now, something I wasn't really sure about is when they had actually came back later and they did the 40-inch caisson, and this was Vanessa Lucido and her company Rock Equipment. They had put a 40-inch caisson down in the money pit in C1, and they went down to a depth of 160 feet. Then, I had forgotten about this, they actually drilled through, because they hit bedrock, they actually drilled through the bedrock another 11 feet, taking them down into the cavity. Now, this right here is a piece of this bedrock, and you see it right here. This is actually from the money pit that I got last year. Pretty hard stuff. But I think that if anything's going to be down inside the money pit, like a treasure, it's going to be in a cavity inside of this bedrock. This is a lot better for making nice, stable tunnels and cavities, right? So in season 4, episode number 9, they brought out Blaine Carr and also Evan Downey, and they came out to do sonar down in C1. This was inside the actual casing, and they were using the Teledyne Blueview multi-beam sonar. They also brought out John Chatterton. He's a professional diver, and you remember he dove on 10X. And now I'll get to that story in another video. Now, getting back to this, they brought out John Chatterton to take a look at this particular borehole. And John and the crew got to watch the multi beam sonar do its work. And they put it up on a tripod and sent it down into the bottom of the C1 borehole. Now, they weren't sure exactly how it was sitting down there because honestly, they had never had any kind of camera other than that crude one that they sent down there. They really didn't get a good look at the bottom anyway. So they put the camera down there and they just started doing some scanning. This one here, actually, I believe it means that the sonar was tilted up just a little bit and it was actually looking at the caisson that it came down. You can see that right here in the top of it. And it looks like the actual line of the cable you can see running right down through the center. Here's a better look at that cavity. You can see it's pretty good size. Later that evening, they got in the war room and they got another look as they processed the data just a little bit more. And you can see there is definitely a very large cavity down there. Another thing they noticed on this sonar was it appeared to them that there was actually a tunnel leading into or out of this C1 cavity. Actually, there were two. They didn't see them on here, but we'll get to that here in just a moment. The next step was to actually send divers down in there, and they brought along Mike Huntley and also John Chatterton. John suited up first and headed down into the borehole C1 to have a look. Now, initially, when got down there, he was feeling along the walls because the visibility was virtually zero. But as he was feeling his way along, he said these statements here. The walls in here are like cut rock. Structurally, it is good for us. In other words, it's okay for sending divers down in there. He didn't have the fear of anything caving in or collapsing. Now, here's a good statement that we've often wondered about. Is there actually current or water flow moving in those cavities down there? Because you know what? They all seem to be connected. So we were wondering, is there any actual water flow down there? And you see John's answer to that right here. There is not much in the way of water movement. John Chatterton's time was up, so they suited up Mike Huntley and he went down. Now, he was feeling his way along the walls as well because, again, the visibility was crap down there. He was feeling his way along the walls and he felt an area that was kind of smooth and wavy. He found something that he said he could not pry off. He said, if it's metal, it's a big ass chunk of it. Here's where he said it's smooth and wavy. Now, Mike also had a metal detector with him down there, and he started scanning around with this metal detector and he came up with several hits, three total. But at this point, he had two very hard hits. John Chatterton went back in with the metal detector again, but unfortunately, this time, John did not find any metal hits. Very curious. In the war room that night, he did sit down and draw out what he thought because he said he went all the way around the cavity of C1 and he kind of drew out what he thought the layout was. And you can see here the top one up here on the very top. He said this here was narrow, very narrow. He could not fit in it, but he could slip his hand in there and he reached back as far as he could and it kept on going. And it was from ceiling to floor. Now he drew out the one that was on the other end, and I believe these are going north and south out of C1. One thing I wanted to point out too about Mike Huntley, when he was down there, they had asked him specifically, are you making sure that you are not picking up any hits from your stainless steel helmet that you're wearing, diving helmet, or of the actual caisson itself? Anything down there that might be what you've taken down in there or something other than metal found in the cavity. He was emphatic that none of the hits were from his equipment or the caisson. They were all something in the cavity itself. That's why it's very curious when John went down, he got nothing. But I think because we ended up with a buzzing noise coming out of the actual metal detector, that there was a problem with it. Something else I want to point out about this was that John said that the cavity down there was about 7 feet high and about 10 feet by 10 feet. Now, you remember one of the original pictures done from the seismic data that they had talked about a roughly 12 by 12 room that they had seen down there. Keep that in mind. Now, here comes the exciting part. Finally, they get a camera down in C1. They had rigged it up with some really good lights because lighting has always been a problem down there. And we get some wonderful pictures. Now, this picture here is just below the caisson, the teeth of the caisson. And it is in that 11-foot area that they actually drilled out with a large drill bit. And look at these pictures down there. Now, when he said, remember he said it was smooth, there was parts of the cavity wall that felt smooth and wavy to him. I think this is what he was feeling. That was Mike Hunley. And again, you've got some smooth areas over here. So it's not all rock and very craggy. Does it look natural? Yeah, I have to say it does look like a natural cavity down there. But what is this? This was the first thing that they saw. This is looking directly down at the floor of the C1 space itself. And you see this object right here in the center, black object. Okay, it doesn't really look like much, but wait till you see these other pictures and you'll see that I believe this is actual metal down there and it had to be brought down by man. Check these out. Here are several pieces. Look at the scattering down here on the floor. Now, this is not directly under the caisson. So it's not stuff that fell down inside the hole that they had drilled with the borehole 6 inch or the caisson, because the caisson went right over top and encompassed the 6 inch borehole. This is on the other side of this cavity. So it's away from the farthest area, away from the caisson. So it didn't fall down in there. Look at those pieces laying on the floor. Now, you could say, looking at that, you could say it's just about anything pieces of wood, but check that out. This is the one that I used in the thumbnail picture because this, in my opinion, is a piece of metal that's leaning up against the wall of the C1 cavity in the bedrock in this stuff right here. Check that thing out. Now, it is not growth on the wall. And the reason I tell you that is because if you look right here, you can see that that is a shadow of this piece that is being cast by the light that is on the camera unit. This is a hook of some sort. And you've got another piece right down here. Now, this area here looks like some sort of growth on the wall. That's why it's hard to distinguish between these different things. But look at this right here. That is another piece laying on the bottom down there. Now, here is a pile of metal. Makes like some sort of a mesh or a tangle of some kind of stuff here. Here's a little bit better picture of it than they got. They swung the light around and got a little bit better look at it. Look at that. Here's another shot of it. Those look like pieces of metal that are all kind of woven together down there. And that's what they had said during the show. If it's not metal, if it's not wood, then what the heck is it? Even if it is wood, why would this wood be down there? I don't believe it's wood. I believe it's metal. There's another wide shot of all of that debris down there. I'm telling you, I think personally that this is metal. And this, if this is metal and it's down there in this C1 cavity, even though I said that the C1 cavity itself is probably natural, I believe man has been down inside here before the divers went down. There's another look at it right there. Wow, pretty incredible stuff, huh? Well, that's what I have for you today. If you want, please check out this video right here that talks a little bit about H8, and this video right here that actually shows a little bit of information about some of the seismic data and combined with the overlays of the actual muon data. I put these together for your viewing. I hope you enjoy them. We'll catch you next time right here on the J Free 906 podcast.